Back. There we go. We are back. The stream is working, and we have an actual morning show guy that knows how to handle mornings better than I do. I just need coffee. We have Chad Adams with us this morning. Good morning, sir.
Happy bienvenidos.
Bienvenidos.
Buenos dias.
Hey, you want a beer?
Probably not my forte in the morning.
Well, certainly not from Tru Colors Brewery. You have 1 day left to get beer. They close their doors forever tomorrow. I have mixed feelings about it. It seemed like it was a great idea at the time. Hey, let's find a bunch of, active criminals in a gang of association, and let's employ them in the same building. And they've been trying this for a couple, 3, 4 years. And I get the idea of trying to rehabilitate, criminals and give them a skill. I get that, but beer and active gang affiliations just didn't seem to be.
I don't think, in that case, TK, you've got to look at Mark Benson, former host of Blue Line Radio, who still has quite a number of followers, by the way. He used to say you can't rehabilitate someone who isn't habilitated to start with. And it's not that the idea behind it. You see these kind of things in a lot of urban rehab projects. You see them in, even out in Kentucky and in rural areas where you have high crime and other things, where you try to create opportunities for folks that have a lot of challenges and maybe have run afoul of the law and change there are two things you try to do. One, you try to break what is the family unit that they've developed. And a lot of times when you don't have a family, when you have a broken home, the gang becomes the family. And so all of the things, all of the loyalties, all of the values that a normal family would instill in someone who's young and impressionable, the bad influence. You see this in with Mexican drug lords. They create a family of sorts. It's a violent one with very strict rules of life and death, but it's a family. So it gives someone who doesn't otherwise have any structure some structure, and it becomes a way of life. And it does it in our neighborhoods, in our streets, everywhere. And so I admire the thought behind it. The problem with a situation like that is it doesn't take but one or two. So whereas in a normal societal setting where crime is punished in a very direct way, and you try, the high propensity of people with the same values are in the same areas. So when crime happens in those areas, it's more striking, more newsworthy. But when you have a higher propensity for criminal activity and you're trying to rehab, so you're in an area that has high crime, you're in an area where those people that are trying to be assisted still have they're still clinging to the value system that they were raised with, or lack of family raised with. Then it doesn't take but one or two bad apples that are either outside that group or one or two inside that group to really mess things up. And so the challenges are much more daunting for that particular brewery, in my estimation. And I think anybody in law enforcement otherwise, I think, it's an attempt to do something really novel and interesting. And sadly, Wilmington has a serious crime problem. It gets swept under the rug a lot. It has a serious drug problem. It has a sex trafficking problem. It has all of the problems of a large metropolitan area in North Carolina's largest town. And Wilmington, in many ways, is a town. It says it's a city, but I mean, the social circles are very tight. Everybody knows everything about everybody and what everybody's doing with everybody all the time. So, and until they decide that to get away from discussing racial issues, until they get away from, having a mentality of us versus them, until they address everything as if there is no color, until they start addressing things in a very direct way, this is going to continue. And you can't politically correct yourself. You can't woke your way out of these systemic problems. You can't. Being
aware of the problem is one thing, but how you behave on it is a completely different.
You can't social justice your way out of it. You can't. You just, all these little catchphrases don't solve the problem. And I was looking at several other issues today across the nation and across even our southern border. You can't sweep the problem under the rug, but so long. But before you don't have a rug, you have a big hump in your room with all of the problems that are spilling out everywhere. And that's what we're seeing in Wilmington. It's what we're seeing in other places. Whenever you directly address problems, you solve them much more quickly.
Now, when I heard about this idea, Walt Gilbertson just chimed in. How much did it cost taxpayers for Rouser to go to see the Mexican border?
Does it matter? How much is it costing us per day when we have 1 million people that are now in the system? There's articles about this, 1 million plus people in the system that is broken and can't afford it. Part of what you do when you have your elected officials in office, you want them to go see problems. How much did it cost to send Nancy Pelosi over to Taiwan? How much did it cost to send a delegation of other Congress people abroad
and somebody
to
else
Turkey?
has popped up in Ukraine, I think. Hinckley? What's the guy's name?
But it doesn't matter. The issue is that's part of the job. It comes with the territory. Blinken. Oh, yeah. Blinken just did a surprise visit to Ukraine. Now, the cost of those things to me is part of the job. I mean, I'm not going to get all bent out of shape because Pelosi went to Taiwan. I mean, it was a provocative act, but it also basically asserted that, hey, Taiwan's our friend. We're not going to abandon them.
Oh, but wait a minute. Blinken took off to Ukraine with a pledge for $2.6 billion in
he came with a check.
So they welcomed him. He was not banned at the airport.
From $13 billion to $15 billion, and you still have to wonder where the hell Congress is in all of this, because they are the power of the purse. I think it may be 30 or 40 billion. I don't know. It's some ridiculous amount. But the issue is, I want the folks in Congress to be aware of the nation's problems. I wish the White House staff would go down to the flipping border and see that we've got millions. We've intercepted about 2 million, in the past year that are coming across the border. When the White House press secretary says there's no people coming across the border, literally, I'm paraphrasing, but she literally said those words that aren't people. And so then that erupted into a fight between she and Senator Ted Cruz. Hey, come down here, meet with me. If I'm wrong, I'll do this. If you're wrong, hey, you guys acting like it doesn't exist doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So for David Rouser, again, for him to go down to the border and find out what the hell's going on, it's not like a pleasant place to go. I lived in Del Rio. It's not the most pleasant place to be right now. So it's not like it was a junket to Thailand or something. It's not a place you want to go, and it's a very dangerous place. And we have people, Americans who own property along that southern border, whose property has been taken over by drug lords. It is an autonomous zone that is being used as a staging area for the sex trade to bring across massive amounts of China-produced fentanyl. We've got multiple terrorists. People that have showed up on the terror list that have been intercepted. And it's funny when you post that, you say, hey, we've gotten like 30 people that are on the known terrorist watch list. And the left response, and people like that who just texted you, they would say, well, would you rather have them loose? No, the issue is that those are the ones we caught. That means that the world, the people that hate us in the world, that hate our freedoms, that hate our way of life, are sending people to Mexico to get into this country. And it's the easiest. If you want to bypass, Homeland Security, the best way to do it, go to the Mexican border. There were even jokes that were serious jokes about the tennis player. Gosh knows, and I'm a big fan. I can't think of his name right now. Djokovic. So Djokovic wins Wimbledon. He's the world's #1 tennis player. He hasn't been vaccinated. He doesn't believe in it. He's had friends that have died, he believes, because of the vaccination or been seriously ill, and it hasn't helped him. And he's in the toxical form for something he considers a cold, and probably for him it would be. And the U.S. government doesn't let him come play. Now, it's not the Tennis Association that's not letting him play, so he's not going to the U.S. Open. If he came from the Bahamas, he could have come in the country, because they don't have a vaccine restriction to come from the Bahamas into the country. If you're an American living abroad, I have relatives that are living in Italy. They're missionaries over there. They've been over there for 5-7 years. They can come into the country without a vaccine, even though they've been living abroad. If you're coming across the border, Djokovic could have gone to Mexico, paid someone in a cartel to get him across the border. Then he's here, and he could have played in the tournament. He's here because you can come across the border without a vaccine card.
He would have been
or
here
vaccine,
with a bag
or papers,
of
or any
cocaine.
identification or anything. So do I want people in Congress? I wish every member of Congress would see what the hell's going on down there, because it's an absolute train wreck. And it is a systemic problem that will be played out for years. Millions of people. Think about this. You've got basically a third of the population of North Carolina that's come across that border in the past year and a half. A third of the population of the entire state that's in the country illegally. And those are the ones that we've intercepted. That is staggering.
So for everyone that we caught, there's 10.
There's roughly 6 more that got through. I think we have they think 20, maybe 20% at best we're getting. But wait, when we get them, we give them a court date, and then we let them go, or send them to New York City or DC or wherever else the government put them on planes and sent them up to other places. So These people are spread out all over the country. They don't show back up for the court date.
Well,
So it's
not
not
after
like
you
we're
displace
catching
them
them
to
and
another
we're sending
state.
some back. We're, if they're on the watch list or they're on the terror watch list, we take care of that. But to sit here and play ignorance and play political games with a thing that is, if you don't have a border, now think about this. We're sending billions in aid to Ukraine because their border was invaded. Because their border is important for the sovereignty of their nation. Our border is critically important to the sovereignty of our nation. And we should act like it. And we should have a White House that gives a damn about it. Because when you don't have a country anymore. And look, I have a massive, massive respect for Hispanic culture. I was raised in it. Yo quiero mucho, te amo. I mean, I love it. But to sit here and act like it doesn't matter. And the people who came here legally and worked here, from Cuban immigrants to Hispanics of any nationality that made it, that they are the ones that paid a heavy price to get here and took the time to do so legally. And they're the ones that are just as upset as I am about what's happening at the southern border. Because what we're doing, and it's amazing, we act like all these people they're trying to make a better life for themselves. That's all well and good. There's a legal way to get here, but there's a lot of them that are being used by nefarious people. I mean, the greatest thing for the Mexican drug cartels right now is the Biden administration not paying attention. And that is terrifying, and it should be. Because imagine if you put together 10 or 15 sleeper cells in critical places of infrastructure for the country, because they can get across the border and assemble and organize and then be used and then just weaponize themselves against us. It's terrifying. Imagine them poisoning a water system. You were worried about Gen X? Imagine if a group of terrorists came across the border and just decided to poison the city water supply at key injection points, which we have all over our water systems. They're not heavily guarded. I ran a water system, and when I was a county commissioner, you had injection points because you want to keep the chlorine levels and fluoride levels at a certain place. It's an easy target, and it's sad. That's just one of 1,000 soft targets that we have all over the place. Bridges. So when someone says, how much did it cost for a congressman to go down to the border? That is a complete denial of the massive problem that we all need to be aware of and do something about.
Man.
So.
Man.
There's my 2 cents on that one.
What a way to get the day started. Sadakat, I don't think I'm going to pronounce your name, sir. Masi. I need help you, my brother.
I need help you, my brother.
Yeah, I'm not entirely...
I need help. You're my brother.
Yeah,
Throw me a lifeline.
Yeah,
Man overboard.
His middle name and his last name are the same. And it looks remarkably un-English.
Like Spam. How do you like your Spam? I like it fried. I saw a commercial for Spam the other day, and I thought it was amazing. I thought, man, I've never wanted Spam as much as I want it now. I want it fried up and in a hot dog bun. I didn't do it. I didn't get it. But, man, it looked good.
Yeah, Spam is remarkably surprising, like when you haven't had it in 10 years.
Or 20.
Right, and they have it on sale, and you're thinking, you know what, let's try this one time. And then you have like one can of it, and you're good for another decade.
Yeah.
You're satiated for a decade.
I was really surprised someone was concerned. I mean, they're not concerned about $13 billion or another $2 billion to Ukraine. They're concerned. They're not concerned about $500 billion, whatever the price is for the student loans that the Biden administration doesn't have the constitutional authority to do. They're not concerned about the billions in waste, fraud, and abuse. They're concerned about a congressman's trip down to the southern border. I'm not trying to be mean or disrespectful to that individual who, and I think that they're probably coming from a partisan place. But it's a shame. It's just a shame. So there are bigger problems. That's not even a problem. That doesn't even rise to the. That's just unbelievable to me. Anyway, but
apparently this viewer who chimed in on text or on the chat,
and I appreciate them viewing, by the way, and caring enough to reach out. That's the one thing I do care about, that they're engaging in a conversation. So none of this is directed at that individual.
No,
it's directed at the issue because his viewpoint is shared by thousands of other people that have similar viewpoints.
This cat, the Masi, I couldn't pronounce, lives in Punjab, Pakistan. So I don't think he's entirely into what we're talking about. However,
probably not.
Julie
it's an internet service in a cave.
Julie Ann Littlefield has added in here, let's go Brandon. Now, I'm a big NASCAR guy myself.
No, it's
but
not. Let's go,
man,
Brandon.
how much?
Look, in honor of Star Wars, it's Darth Brandon now. So, he looked like Emperor Palpatine the other night. The red stuff and the military in the background. It was Darth Brandon giving a speech as Emperor. It was really that beautiful speech where it's just decided to go completely with the dark side. I mean, so let's go, Brandon. Yeah,
I'm still reeling on, because Tru Colors, the brewery, has lasted a lot longer than I thought they would. Given the
why is that?
workload.
Why do you say that?
Well, because they actively employed active gang members in rivalries. So they had Crips and Bloods and whatever. I don't know what the flavors are of gangs
But
these days.
that has been an ongoing desire. I mean, excuse me, let me rephrase it. That has been an ongoing process for the past, I don't know, at least the past decade, where there are groups that are trying to get these folks to realize, hey, you're in a rival gang. It's kind of like, two football teams that hate each other when they're on the field. When they're off the field, they're just high school
When
kids.
these guys are off the field, they're shooting each other.
Right, but they've been trying to change that mentality to say, hey, look, you guys actually, even though you're in rival gangs, you have the same value system, screwed up though it may be, you still have all of these human values, and we're trying to change your value system to value life, to value friendships, to value relationships, to value responsibility, to value the parts that make civilization worthwhile. And so that's an ongoing effort. And I mean, what I'm not hearing you say, it wasn't that they had a rival gang shootout that shut down the brewery. It sounds like you had some of the systemic problems in that community that actually contributed to the shutdown, or people were scared to go to a brewery because it's in a gang infested territory. It's hard to create a retail establishment in a dangerous place. It's like, hey, welcome to Pablo Escobar's barrio.
Right.
Come on down, have a drink.
So the stories that I related around it are that the gang members were murdering each other in the house of the corporate operation, or the guy operations officer, chief operations officer. Two people, yeah, but that doesn't happen in a normal job. So if you're going to try and reform gang members, I'm thinking beer, alcohol is probably not the best place to start. If you want, I would say employ them with like the Eden Village, where their work is going to contribute to something helpful for other people, not getting them drunk and committing more crimes.
You're asserting that the people in the brewery are the ones getting drunk, and that I didn't see that in any of the stories. But the issue is, again, you got to almost drinks. It's hard to fix a community from within the community. You almost have to get people out and then get enough of a groundswell of the right kind of people to fix a community. You need leadership. You need political will. You need ancillary groups. You need a lot of support to change the mentality of a given community, barrio, neighborhood, rural setting.
$14 million is a lot of corrections,
Hey, Jackson, Mississippi for 30 years didn't figure out how to deliver water to people. But somehow it's social racism. It's everyone else's fault that Jackson can't figure out a way to provide fresh water to people.
No, that's a government thing.
It's not
right?
their lack of leadership. It's not their fault. It's always someone else's fault.
But that's a government thing, right?
Who runs the government down there? So that's where you get into it.
The people that they elected down there. And
that's
those
right.
Are the ones
so
who pocketed the money.
You start electing enough people that are social justice warriors, then all of the real problems will never go away. You just won't. And all these accolades and overtures and grants, that doesn't necessarily mean the problem's being fixed, addressed. It means it's being glossed over.
Sorry about that. Yep. I blew up the whole thing trying to respond. Sorry.
What'd you blow up?
So, I need another. I have too many things on one computer, and I accidentally muted everybody while trying to respond to the "Let's Go Brandon" comment. So, part of what you just last said was a bit.
You
muted.
clipped me.
Yeah, I
did.
Edited
me. You edited me.
I'm
going to talk to management about this. I'm going to have a discussion with management about being muted.
I wanted to make sure we were not thrown off the YouTube and Facebook platforms, so I censored you.
I was censored. Wow, never been censored except by my own company. That's pretty sad. And it's censored at a time when the FCC isn't even paying attention. That's always great. That's the best, isn't it? Well, were you censored ever in your career? Well, yes, I actually was. What did you say? Well, I didn't say it on air. It was my own team that censored me. Were you saying anything controversial? No, actually, at the time, I wasn't. I was talking about golden retrievers and puppy dogs. So they censored me.
Yep. Because you're not talking about anything controversial or
me controversial?
Not at all. So we have
no, that's not going to happen. Controversy is not me.
I believe we have one of your friends on tomorrow. I should, before we do the break, I wanted to remind folks that we will have Mr. Miller back on tomorrow. Yeah, not Charlie, Miller. Matt Miller from Zero Cancer Organization.
Oh,
Zero
is this
Cancer.
About
the Cancer Run.
Which one? Cancer Run.
Yep.
Yes.
The Cancer Run is on Saturday, so his last bid to get people involved is tomorrow. All right, so he'll be on letting us know about that. And let's see, we also have Dr. Olivares from the New Mexico State University who had a family emergency Tuesday morning. She will be joining us tomorrow morning to talk about the humongous fungus, which is one of those harbingers of death.
You've been loving this one for a while.
I have been waiting on it ever since I read the article in The Atlantic. It's like...
See, I'm telling you, TK, you're one step away from George Norrie and Coast to Coast, and that the longest running show in history. You're just one step away. I mean, all you had to do was add that fungus had alien potential origins, and you're there.
Well, it is alien in the sense that it's the same DNA over 2,500 square miles.
So there you go, and that's great. And you know what? That's just like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. They're everywhere.
Little pods pop up.
Yeah, pod people. But hey, when we come back, I also want a couple things to mention. Through the course of time, the past 40 years, we hear what really gains attention with media and in our mindset are the constant barrage of negative environmental news. We buy into it. We talked about it yesterday. The fear mongering, the world's going to be over, a lot of dystopian movies. But there's some really good news that's come out in the past couple of weeks that's not getting a lot of coverage. It's not. If you look at all the 3-letter news agencies are not covering a lot of this, but the news is there. It's documented. It's not fabricated. It's not some kind of conspiracy, right-leaning, ignore science stuff. It's actual science. It's good news. It's out there. There's also some interesting stuff about what's happening in Pennsylvania that's worth mentioning because the Senate race there and here and in Georgia and other places. Critically important, and the issues with John Fetterman are mounting. They're not going away. And then there's some good is the wrong word, but some honest discussions about the lockdowns that scientists are now looking back and they're studying. Okay, what happened over the past 2 years? And the only way we're ever going to improve as humans is to actually look at what happened and be honest about it so that we don't screw it up next time it happens. And the way governments react and scientists react and stuff. So lots to talk about.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's why I like having an actual morning show host. Otherwise, I just go through that list of headlines I spewed earlier and just pick the most insane one and riff on that for 20, 30 minutes.
Of course you do. As we approach Halloween, I'm waiting for your Michael Myers story that pops up. I'm surprised you didn't pull, the guy in Canada that stabbed and killed, I don't even know how many people he killed with a knife. I'm waiting for people to start banning knives because it was a mass murder. Or the guy in Memphis that went on a tirade and killed a bunch of people over time that should have been in prison still.
Oh, yeah.
And, and smiling the whole time he's taking his mug shots like he's posing for Vanity Fair. So, it's break time.
That's why I can't do it, man. I'm still such a babe in the woods with this stuff. I don't know where to go with it. I'm just stunned. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Asylum will be right back after these messages. Please don't go nowhere. That's the button.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. The Tru Colors brewery, which hires active gang members, will close for good on Friday. Tru Colors founder George Taylor cites product concerns, COVID delays, and financial issues as major challenges leading the decision to shut down operations. In Taylor's announcement, he says Tru Colors lost more than $5 million in investments over the past year due to, quote, salacious headlines that scared off investors. A multi-million-dollar investment will bring more than 200 jobs to Wilmington. Governor Roy Cooper came to town yesterday to announce Live Oak Bank is investing $25 million to expand its campus and bring more than 200 jobs to the area. The jobs will be for several departments, including analysts, data scientists, and loan service specialists. The average salary will be $101,000 per year. An appeals court has ruled recreational fishermen can continue suing the state over accusations government regulators have violated state fishing laws. A 2020 lawsuit by the State Coastal Conservation Association and more than 80 people claimed the state allowed excessive for-profit commercial fishing and certain fishing methods, leading to dramatic declines in certain fish stocks since 1997. And CFCC students are celebrating this morning after it was announced the college may be changing course regarding its marine technology program. Initially, the college made the decision to change the employment status of the marine tech staff from exempt to non-exempt, which would have lowered pay for captains guiding the students. Marine technology students gathered on the Riverwalk in downtown Wilmington yesterday with plans to protest that change. However, administration told students they would implement sea time, an effort to make sure on-staff captains are compensated for time worked in excess of 40 hours during a work week while at sea. For more on these stories, you can head on over to wwaytv3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Not as unsettled as it was on our Wednesday, and definitely not going to be as hot as inland communities. We'll only make it into the middle 80s, which is right where we should be for this time of year. Lower 80s in store for us along the immediate coastline with a high risk for rip currents for those east-facing beaches. So it's best to stay out of the water if you're headed out to the coast on this Thursday. As for the chances for rain, that starts to pick up to about 30% heading into the afternoon and the evening hours. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh, local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
This week on All Things Brunswick, Dr. Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation will join us to discuss the recently released test scores from the state regarding student achievement and also to discuss the Brunswick scores in relation to statewide. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesdays here on The Big Talker.
Smart device with your automobile's entertainment system. Take the Big Talker anywhere and everywhere you have to be, whether you want to be there or not. You can peruse our schedule of content on the website to find when your favorite show airs on the Big Talker Listen Live tab. You can also send an email with any comments, questions, concerns, compliments, or critiques you may have. We cannot improve without your feedback. And one of the best ways for the Asylum to improve is to bring on smart people who know what the hell they're talking about, which is why we have this morning Mr. Chad Adams from the Chad Adams Show joining us to help straighten my silly self out, because, of course, I want to see every politician behind bars. I don't care if they're Purple Hippopotamus Party. If they commit a crime, if they smell like they committed a crime, bury them.
See, that's not what you said. The first thing you said, you wanted them all behind bars, and then we can just have complete. It could be like the Purge.
Yeah.
Except not one day a year. It would be like every day a year. We just
anybody who wants to be a politician with an MBA, you bury them.
You get rid of every politician, and then you have mob rule. And
every politician that is a lawyer or an MBA. Lawyers who are like actual medical doctors, except that Oz Mehmet dude, he's like just his own basket of crazy.
Well, okay.
But they're
you
all
just
crazy.
opened up a Pandora's box of things we can talk about, and we will talk about the Mehmet Oz John
Because
Fetterman
we had
race.
Littlefield and Beatty chiming in, and I wanted to make sure that they understand that we see this. What are your predictions of President Trump being indicted in October? I hope not, from Miss Littlefield. And Miss Beatty, whose reference I have missed apparently, I want them all to go, so maybe she's on my side. So tired of them turning a blind eye and pretending it isn't happening.
So, I mean, that could apply to so many different issues, and that's one of those very astute observations where people look at society and they're sick of seeing things just ignored. The situation that the first person about Trump, if you have the opportunity to follow someone like Jonathan Turley, and Turley's a Democrat, but he's I consider him more moderate than he used to be, but he's a very astute observer of due process, and he's done a great job of documenting where the FBI, Trump has been more investigated than any human being in U.S. history. And I challenge anyone to find someone, even Al Capone wasn't this thoroughly investigated. So the left has tried to pin him. In my opinion, they've weaponized certain agencies to go after him. I think that's true now because the documents that were released now show that the Biden White House not only was aware of this raid, but actually pushed for it and authorized it. We do know that there was information in the Mar-a-Lago that probably shouldn't have been there. Now, was a crime committed? That's the real question, because there are people that want to just arrest him and bury him, like Rob Reiner, that say, let's just arrest him, put him in handcuffs, put him behind bars, bury him, kill him, publicly execute him, whatever. But that's an abandonment of due process when you do that. So there's certainly a lot of pressure there to try to indict him. Would I be surprised if there was an indictment? I wouldn't be surprised, just because But the other side of it that's undermining the FBI is every time a story breaks that it was bad from the first, armed, group of individuals that went down there. They didn't include the Miami branch office. They did it from D.C. That looked bad. And when it blew back on them, they released some information. When that blew back on them, they released more information. And, when they started talking about executive privilege, that blew back on them. They released information. So there's more leaks in this FBI case then you can shake a stick at. But every time they do that, I think they undermine their ability to indict him and act like an unbiased enforcer of the law. The FBI has serious image problems. There's no leaks from the Hunter Biden investigation. So whoever's doing that, maybe they should be doing the Trump investigation because they're keeping a tight lid. But every other day, it seems the FBI is trying to get one step ahead of their bad press on how they screwed up on this one. But to your point about him possibly being indicted, sure. I mean, Bannon's going in for sentencing, I believe, turning himself in for or facing additional charges. Manafort's done, but they ended up getting released. Papadopoulos. They've had several people they put in jail where they didn't end up getting anything out of it. So I don't know. I think there's certainly the question is it more about politics? Or is it more about the law?
My question is, if it's about the law, is it about intent? Right? Because if I accidentally slip a package of ham down the front of my pants and walk out the store, I didn't mean to steal it, but I stole it.
You still get processed. I didn't mean to speed down the interstate the day I got pulled for 83 and a 70, but I did it. And so you still face the consequences of your actions. So if he broke the law, they can prove he broke the law, then go after him. But it's not hard to prove that somebody, everybody. I mean, if you read the book 3 Felonies a Day, if you follow kind of the every one of us to the letter of the law is indictable somewhere. And people say, no, I'm not. But yeah, you dig far enough. You missed a deduction on your taxes or you filed it wrong. There's 1,000 different ways to go. Imagine you in your own life, whether you hate Trump or not. And this is one thing I think people on the left miss, that they have a blind spot. They think in terms of MAGA and they're trying to indict, the 70 some odd people that voted for Trump as MAGA Republicans. And what they miss, and think about what they're saying, that Bill Clinton said we're going to make America great again. And that was a movement to elect Bill Clinton. When it's a movement to elect Trump, it means fascism in their mind. But let's take it a step further. A lot of people who voted for Trump don't like him personally. Let that sink in for a minute. There are a lot of people that vote ideologically, and they don't necessarily like the person, but they like the philosophy. A lot of people who voted for Trump liked what he accomplished, and they're very proud of what he accomplished. That doesn't make them domestic terrorists, and it doesn't make Trump a horrible person because it doesn't make those people horrible people. So that's one of the things I think the more people attack Trump, they leave out the accomplishments that went with it. They leave out the global security at the time. They leave out the NATO stuff. They leave out the southern border stuff. They leave out someone who did decentralize the federal government on a day-to-day basis. They leave out the fact that he did push back on the media, which we haven't had a Republican do, except maybe Reagan, where he would say, there they go again. But Reagan was very nice about it. Trump is a very, smash mouth kind of guy. That's just the way he was. He was in New York. He's been that way his whole life. So he wasn't going to change his colors. And they're not used to someone like him or hate him. I wish more of our politicians were a little more straightforward about stuff. And I think due to Trump, you have the Kristi Noems, you have the Kerry Lakes out in Arizona, you have the Ron DeSantis, that you've got much more bold political types. I mean, Rand Paul was ahead of his time, but he just didn't galvanize the nation the way that Trump did. I mean, Rand Paul's been pushing back against the system and has paid a heavy price. I mean, he's been knifed almost to death. He was almost shot. He was at that baseball game where Scalise got shot. Rand Paul has been pushing back. And think about the price these Republicans are paying. They're getting shot and attacked and approached in restaurants and threatened on a day-to-day basis. Kavanaugh. I mean, when's the last time you think of a Supreme Court Supreme Court justice that's had someone try to kill them? It's just unheard of. And so, when you have Maxine Waters out there screaming, we're going to confront them in restaurants, we're going to tell them you're not welcome here anymore. Those are bold threats. When you have Kathy Griffin, the person who had a decapitated Trump head with blood all over her, talking, posting on Twitter, she just posted the other day, you either vote Democrat or if you vote Republican, we're going to have a civil war. Those are really insightful things. And the left doesn't assume any of the responsibility for the violence they push. And if you look at it, it's far more likely. And Lois Lerner even admitted they were targeting conservative organizations when she was helping to run the IRS. These kind of things are all documented. They're all real. And when I disagree with the Supreme Court, I don't want to go attack them and kill them. When I disagreed with Obama or Biden, I don't want to kill him. I don't want to go out and end their life or put them in jail if they committed crimes. To TK's point, put them in jail. But if it's just about getting the person in jail because you don't like them, that ought to terrify you, because that same thought process you can put yourself in a mirror and look at that, and someone could say the same exact thing about you and the people that you like. And that's not a society you want to be in, where you just go arrest somebody for the sake of the fact you don't like them and you disagree with them or you don't like their personality. I don't like you, so I'm going to put you in jail. That is terrifying. It's fascist. And we saw this in the 30s in Germany. We saw this with Mussolini. We've seen this with Castro. We've seen it with Hugo Chavez. We've seen it with dictator after dictator. That when you don't like somebody, you think you can jail them, you're no better than those people that incarcerated the people they disagreed with. Yet makes you the fascist. You're not the anti-fascist. You're the fascist. If you just want to jail somebody for that, that's the terrifying part about where we are in society today, is people think, oh, I'll just put him in jail. Even with Hunter Biden, I just want Hunter Biden investigated. He documented his lawlessness. I mean, when you film yourself with hookers and coke and you film yourself breaking laws, there should be consequences to that. Anyone, if TK documented himself doing crack and putting it on YouTube, you know what? He'd probably be hunted down and prosecuted.
Police have been using exactly that to prosecute and jail criminals across the country for the last 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
And why,
so I'm amazed that Hunter Biden is still going on vacation with Dad down at Hilton Head. I'm astounded at that. Kiowa Island.
Don't
want to get it wrong. Someone will say, "Oh, you got it wrong, Chad."
Was that Hawaii?
No, Kiowa's down in South Carolina.
Oh, well, that's where the good coke is.
Hunter would know, right? There's a new movie about Hunter. I definitely want to see it.
There's some truisms. If you follow a reggae band, that's where the best weed is going to be. If you follow Hunter Biden, that's where the best cocaine will be.
Well, I'm not going to pretend to have that kind of knowledge. I would know, but I figured it was grown in South America and then imported up here, right? So I would figure the best processing. If you watch Narcos long enough, you kind of figure out where it probably comes from.
But the cigarette go flying.
But this is the problem in society. We really have gotten into a cult of personalities, where one group thinks that there's fealty to an individual, and they don't understand it. There are thousands and millions of people that are sick of DC, and that there is actually a movement to break DC. And Trump represented a lot of that movement for people who hate the inside gamesmanship of DC, where you want to break that lobbyist and staff hold on DC perpetuating itself like a bad, for lack of a better word, a bad fungus that just wants to reproduce. And it becomes, like you said, TK, to the fungus discussion we're going to have in a few days. You've got, 10,000, or I don't know, 200 square miles of absolute filth that's responsible for leading the greatest nation on earth. To me, it's problematic because it's astounding we're not worse off, because the powers that be are not governing us. They're governing to give you a good example, Congress was always designed in this country. If you look back at the founding of the country, the way Congress became a representative part of the government, it was meant, in 2-year terms, it was meant to be a reflection of society. In other words, as issues popped up, and it kind of went with the sway of things. So when an issue came up and the Congress would write a law and they'd try to pass it, they'd get all excited about fixing a problem, whether it exists or not. But it's popular. It's a popular place. The Senate was designed with 6-year terms where a third of it's turning over every election cycle. But it also was designed to be a geographic representation of the country. So a state like Delaware and a state like Texas have the same number of senators. Or a state like California and a state like Rhode Island have the same number of senators, because those states have interest. The Senate was also designed to be more methodical, to be slower, and not to react to everything that happened on the ground. But it works very effectively. And there's a lot of wisdom in the people who put this system together to say, okay, so something's sweeping through the country and is really popular at the time, and Congress passes law and the Senate says, well, let's just slow this down a little bit and take a longer look at it and see if it's something that really is a problem, or is it just a popular problem, or maybe it just needs to be nuanced and fixed. Now, what's happened in the past, I'd say 20 years, is that the Senate has become much more reactionary. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of that. Is the left, we're approaching an election. And so the political left says, oh, my God, this abortion issue, they overturned Roe. And all those Supreme Court justices, they lied and they need to be thrown out. And we need to indict Trump so we can get rid of the 3 justices he appointed. That's kind of this revisionist history way of doing it. But it's being said. It's in those circles. And not only that, but because and what they don't admit is that Roe v. Wade overturned did not make abortions illegal at all. It just remanded the issue back to the states to say, hey, it's not really explicitly covered in the Constitution based on the Mississippi law that was challenged here, this 15-week thing. It's something that needs to be remanded to the states, and they need to decide. So now you have an assortment of options from, more restrictive to at-will abortions in different states. And that's the way that was designed to be. The founder, you may not like the founders, but that's the way they designed it to be. So now the left has said, well, my God, they overturned Roe. They're going to overturn the legality of gay marriage, which there's no inclination. First of all, the Supreme Court doesn't bring their own cases. Other people bring cases to the Supreme Court, and they have to decide whether they're going to take them or not. There's no indication that that's going to change. All states in the country basically have affirmed gay marriage. And even if they did remand it to the states, every state would do it. What you've got to say is the federal government the arbiter of marriage? I would say I want the federal government out of marriage entirely. I'd love for it to be kicked back to the states. But anyway, so the left is trying to gain votes by turning this all over to a law. They want to codify in law the recognition of same-sex marriage. And so that's a popular issue to do, meaning it's populist, it's grassroots, it's getting people all emotional. So you would expect Congress to do that. What you don't expect is the Senate to do that. And that's what we've got with Chuck Schumer pushing an affirmation of marriage, gay marriage, as law of the land. Now, what's ironic about that is the constitutionality of that law could be challenged. But they're trying to do it. It's before an election. It's a way to get votes. And so they've convinced about 10 Republican senators, including Tom Tillis, by the way, who was Speaker of the House here in North Carolina before going up to the Senate. And they convinced a bunch of mushy, moderate Republicans to get on board with an affirmation of federal recognition of marriage as between 2 men or 2 women. I'm waiting, by the way. To me, what's almost unconstitutional about a lot of this is, why is it that Congress is only focused on 2 people getting married? I mean, if you have the belief that marriage is really a contract between individuals at the federal level, why couldn't 3 people get married? Why wouldn't a throuple or 4 or 5? Why stop at 2? What's the magic number about 2 to Democrats or Tom Tillis for that matter? Why is 2 the magic number?
You've been to Utah, haven't you?
Yeah, Salt Lake.
In which case they have multiple.
Well, no, they don't. It's illegal. Polygamy is illegal, but they have a bunch of sister wives. There's even a show on TV of people openly, there's sister wife shows. And there's still, it's the primary principle of Mormonism. It's the first principle, I think they call it. So, yeah, it's there, but they're not really, as long as they don't create a problem, but there's an illegal
contract.
Right. But the point is, if it's a contract and if it doesn't matter, and this is where if you're religious at all, if you have faith, if you have a belief system in that, and that marriage is a sacrament, is sanctified in some way, that it's between a man and a woman, it should remain a religious recognition. I mean, the reason the government got into the marriage business was mainly because it was the belief that families were good for the country, that having a nuclear family was good for the country, that having two parents and children, that was good for the country. Well, through the 60s, 70s, and the cultural sexual revolution and all that, that kind of all went by the wayside. And there are many, and you see that degradation of society where you end up with way too many single moms, way too many absent dads. And so in the shadow of the nuclear family being irrelevant from a government standpoint, there's still a deduction and stuff. But I mean, the government doesn't really stand up and say, we really wish more of you guys were together. We end up arbitrating all this stuff in our local courts. Our courts are full of child support cases across the nation.
Divorce.
Divorce and child support. I mean, that's why the wonders of lust, right? You like that person and you make a kid with them, but then you don't like that person anymore. Or anyway, it's unfortunate because it's had a serious impact on society. So now we're not valuing family; we're valuing marriage between any two individuals, rather than the result of what marriage brings about. And so the fact that Congress is dealing with this now before the election, it should, regardless of whether you're Democrat or Republican, it should raise your eyebrows and say, the timing on this is rather specious. You're using the Supreme Court as a wedge to try to push an issue because you're doing it out of fear. We should never be doing legislation out of fear. That's ridiculous. And people say, well, Chad, you're afraid of migrants coming across the border. No. I'm not afraid of migrants coming. What I'm afraid of, and the fear is not the right word. You don't have a country if you don't have a border. I think that it is the best policy to protect our country. And I do think that a country that values family is a stronger country. So I think this is the kind of reactionary stuff, back to my original point. It's the kind of reactionary stuff that undermines the Senate's validity in society. You don't want, because if we start having just a reactionary Congress and Senate, then it's yet one more nail in the casket of what was once an inspired and amazing nation.
So getting in front of the 8-ball rather than being behind the 8-ball would be the preferred position.
But think about that, TK. Think if let's just say that I was president right now, and I said to the nation, fellow Americans, I believe that the institution of marriage is important and sacred. That's my personal belief. As your president, I believe this is one of those issues that is not covered in the Constitution. And it's my belief that it should be handed over to the states. If you said something like that, then the nation would lose its ever-loving mind. And yet, we want to value the states should matter. And that's, I think, one of the critical issues of war between the left and right. The left believes in a strong, powerful federal government. The Constitution gets in the way of federalizing everything. And there's many aspects of the federal government that shouldn't be there. And as a libertarian / conservative, they shouldn't be there. They're not in the Constitution. We've done all this stuff that didn't need to be done. If we did it, we could really solve our debt problems by getting rid of a lot of those things and remanding them back to the states. And the states have an obligation. And so the left believes that the federal government is the end-all solver of problems. And yet from Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, it hasn't solved those problems. Those programs haven't been run in a timely and efficient manner. And they're bureaucratic nightmares. The IRS, top it off. I mean, our tax code is a debilitated wreck. It's a haunted house of its own bureaucratic weight. So, and the right does a very poor job of pushing hard for making things more relevant to the states. And because they're scared of what the media is going to do if they say it. And again, to what I said earlier, no president will stand up there. Trump came the closest to doing it, saying this needs to be. When Bush tried to do it, they kicked him right between the legs, and he went scurrying back to the White House and stopped what he was doing. But the federal government isn't the great answer to our societal problems. Sounds good to say it, But in name any area that they've really solved the problems. I would say, you could say, well, the EPA's made things better, but you could say that could have been handled by the states just as easily. There's no states work across state
Only
lines
if they
to
would
handle.
Communicate.
But they would, and they do. They often do. You've got multiple lawsuits involving 20, 30 states, attorney general, and stuff like that. So you can, and you want to, and you want to help all those things. So we would be a better nation if we could do that. But right now we have a very reactionary DC who doesn't seem to have any semblance of care about borrowing money and kicking the can down the road. And when you bring it up, people say, well, it's never going to matter. It may not matter now. It may not matter 5-10 years from now. But at some point, it undermines our ability to function. And so if Russia and China are successful in creating, getting countries away from the American dollar, and the confidence in the American dollar goes away, and all this debt we have comes to bite us, that bite will be more profound than any zombie apocalypse movie that's ever been done. How's that?
And we're still young in our, we're what, a little over 230, 240 years?
Still, the longest surviving, experiment driven by the respect for one piece of paper. That no one in the world has that. We have laws, that are not of men, of government rather than of men. So we believe in the power of governance because of respect for a piece of paper. The minute that piece of paper goes away, it's the country as you know it is over. And there's a big push to get rid of that. And remember, there's a lot of push that when you're toppling statues of Jefferson and Washington, and when you're getting rid of and you're calling the founders a bunch of racists, and you're saying they're just a bunch of outdated white men, what you're doing is you're trying to discredit the things that were the result of their actions. Why would I say that? So let's take that for a second and say, so if we can undermine the individuals that created the Constitution, then we can get rid of the Constitution. Because if you can demoralize our belief in the founders, then anything that those founders did, you can get rid of. And here's a vivid example of that. Right now, the desire to indict Trump and get rid of Trump is followed by many on the left that say, well, if we indict him and we can get him in court and we can convict him, then anything he did, we can undo. That's an insane way of thinking. But let's go with that for a minute. They would undo the 3 justices, because if they can't undo the justices, they want to pack the court. In other words, if we can't undo those 3, then we're going to add, 6 more justices to the court so that we can pack it with our side, the left, so that it'll be a left-leaning court again. So they can't accept the reality of the way it is. But I go back to the Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, those guys. The same mentality. If they can undermine those guys, they can kick out the entire support for the Constitution and get rid of it. And that, again, that's the part that should be terrifying to people. It's not. It's the direction they've tried to head in for 50 years.
But you can't terrify people if they don't read the Constitution in all of its glory.
Now think about that. Now you're right. And I think that government-run public education has done a fantastic job of undermining the historical relevance of this country. It has done a fantastic job of undermining our ability to be the great country. You're right. They confuse rights with kind of a hedonistic approach to things.
It's my right to drive 130 in a 55. It's my right.
They want rights without responsibility. And that is the critical part. But the Constitution is really, really clear about responsibility. When Franklin says a republic, if you can keep it, not in the Constitution, it's a quote. What he's saying is we all have an inherent responsibility to respect that which was created, that which came before us. The beauty of America is it makes mistakes, but it also faces those mistakes. And then we move forward. And are we going to make more mistakes? Oh, my God, yes. There will be more challenges. The government will make mistakes. Companies will make mistakes. People will make mistakes. Crimes will be committed. But it doesn't, at the very end of the day, every day should be a reflection and a deal of gratitude, a debt of gratitude for those who came before us and didn't just pave it with a piece of paper and standing up to a British monarch. But the fact that they paid for it with their lives on the battlefields here and abroad. When we went to war with ourselves over over the issue of states' rights and slavery, and more people died in that war than all of our other wars combined. It says something about a nation that wants to deal with its problems. And for the people who don't want to believe in this nation, that's a crying shame. Some people on the right would say, well, just leave it. If you don't like it, America, love it or leave it. Well, I think what I'd rather do is get the people that don't understand it and hate it to understand it and respect it. And still, you can still fight for what you believe in and have foundational respect for the nation.
There are some truisms right there, and that's why we have Chad Adams on here. Otherwise, I'd just be making penis jokes. And that's why I've been working so hard to get an actual morning show host on here, because it's an amazing switch, I guess. It's a whole different lane of conversation, which is actually far more relevant than the stuff that I come up with. So I'm extremely grateful to have you on the show this morning. I mean, it's definitely adding some context to the silliness that's coming out in the media all the way around. Whether it's a 3-letter media or just a little, hippie behind the scenes like me here at the Big Talker. So with that in mind, I guess Chad's going to regroup here. Where did it go? That's my button. All right. With that in mind, the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, will be right back after these messages. Don't go nowhere. You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.
This week on All Things Brunswick, Dr. Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation will join us to discuss the recently released test scores from the state regarding student achievement and also to discuss the Brunswick scores in relation to statewide. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesdays here on the Big Talker.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to the program whenever you want, however you want, by asking for Big Talker.
One Love Tennis started in 2013 to give back to young boys and girls. We now go through 460 kids a week that are learning about life skills, learning to succeed in life through academics and tennis. Putting those two together, if you do them well, you can write your own ticket. To get involved in this program, go to our website, one-love-tennis.org.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. The Tru Colors brewery, which hires active gang members, will close for good on Friday. Tru Colors founder George Taylor cites product concerns, COVID delays, and financial issues as major challenges leading the decision to shut down operations. In Taylor's announcement, he says Tru Colors lost more than $5 million in investments over the past year due to, quote, salacious headlines that scared off investors. A multi-million-dollar investment will bring more than 200 jobs to Wilmington. Governor Roy Cooper came to town yesterday to announce Live Oak Bank is investing $25 million to expand its campus and bring more than 200 jobs to the area. The jobs will be for several departments, including analysts, data scientists, and loan service specialists. The average salary will be $101,000 per year. An appeals court has ruled recreational fishermen can continue suing the state over accusations government regulators have violated state fishing laws. A 2020 lawsuit by the State Coastal Conservation Association and more than 80 people claimed the state allowed excessive for-profit commercial fishing and certain fishing methods, leading to dramatic declines in certain fish stocks since 1997. And CFCC students are celebrating this morning after it was announced the college may be changing course regarding its marine technology program. Initially, the college made the decision to change the employment status of the marine tech staff from exempt to non-exempt, which would have lowered pay for captains guiding the students. Marine technology students gathered on the Riverwalk in downtown Wilmington yesterday with plans to protest that change. However, administration told students they would implement sea time, an effort to make sure on-staff captains are compensated for time worked in excess of 40 hours during a work week while at sea. For more on these stories, you can head on over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Not as unsettled as it was on our Wednesday, and definitely not going to be as hot as inland communities. We'll only make it into the middle 80s, which is right where we should be for this time of year. Lower 80s in store for us along the immediate coastline with a high risk for rip currents for those east-facing beaches. So it's best to stay out of the water if you're headed out to the coast on this Thursday. As for the chances for rain, that starts to pick up to about 30% heading into the afternoon and the evening hours. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh, local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
This week on All Things Brunswick, Dr. Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation will join us to discuss the recently released test scores from the state regarding student achievement and also to discuss the Brunswick scores in relation to statewide. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesdays here on The Big Talker.
Live is the website. Please visit the website to peruse our schedule of content. Download the app for Android and iOS devices. Pair that smart device with your automotive entertainment system, and you can take the Big Talker anywhere and everywhere you have to be, whether you want to be there or not. You can also download the app. You can also peruse the schedule of content. Send us an email with any comments, questions, and concerns. If you can't tell, it's a Thursday morning. I am still dead asleep, which is why we have a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Mature host this morning, Mr. Chad Adams. Surprise, you're on the air now.
You're trying to be Johnny Donovan, I don't know, or what was the guy, Johnny Carson? I don't know.
Ed McMahon.
Ed was a co-host, I guess.
Oh, that's right, Ed, Johnny.
Yeah, Ed would just have a few drinks and agree with Johnny. So you rarely agree with anyone. So very different. Yeah, interesting day. I mean, as I look out, I try. It was so wonderful last night. The breeze was blowing. It was cool. Today I came out to the office area here as I look over the Cape Fear and the Coast Guard station in Southport. And I said, I'm going to open the windows. Well, it was 69 when I did that. And it's going to go to 87. So we're going to have massive climate change today. Weather meteorologically, it's going to zip up. It was warm and humid. So I closed those windows and did something you can't. I did something today you can't do in California. And that was I turned the AC on. I find it fascinating. It's hotter in Texas and Florida than it is in California, and yet California can't keep up with its own energy needs. That just cracks me up. I saw pictures of people that were charging their electric cars with gasoline-powered generators. Which, if you can just picture that for a moment, it sinks in an entirely different way. And I can't wait till we have a hurricane in 2035. And everyone's trying to clean up the brush and debris without any gas-powered engines. You can't buy a gas-powered lawnmower in California anymore? I didn't know that. I just learned that. I just thought, wait till you can't run a chainsaw with, you can't have a gas-powered chainsaw. So the power's out, and you got storm debris everywhere, and you've got no gas-powered ways to do that. It's just these policies. Just when you start applying reality to this wishful thinking stuff, that you're making things worse, not better. I mean, those people more people die of heat than die of cold. More people die of cold than heat. I was looking through my really positive story of the day, and it's actually a great one. New York Post has it. Several other people have it, and it was highlighting some of the really good news out there that that people aren't paying attention to.
Very short.
You know,
article.
Are you there?
It must be a very short article.
No, it's a long article. Why would I say short? It's an amazing article. You know, with
I'm just not convinced that there's good news in the country right now.
In the world, in the year 1900, around 4.5% of the land area of the entire world would burn every year. People don't think about that because we have a very poor reflection of what happened in the past, because we think of today as, oh, it's the end of the world. It's absolutely the opposite. But over the last century, it's now 3.2%. So more people, more fire suppression, more ability to put out fires. We're not having more forest fires. We're having fewer forest fires, and it's burning less. But it doesn't make the news that way. In the last 2 decades, satellites show even further decline. In 2021, just 2.5%. So we're almost half of what was burning a little over a century ago. Mostly because societies, over time, learn how to prevent fires. Models show that by the end of the century, despite climate change, human adaptation will mean even less land will be burning. And despite what you've heard about record-breaking costs from weather disasters, mainly because wealthier populations build more expensive houses at coastal areas, damage costs are declining, not increasing as a percent of GDP. But it's not only weather that's getting less damaging. A decade ago, environmentalists screamed about Australia's magnificent Great Barrier Reef. It was almost dead, is bleaching out. Climate change was ending it. Killed by bleaching. And yet, this year, scientists revealed that 2/3 of the Great Barrier Reef shows the highest coral ever seen since records began in 1985 looking at it. That's good news. We should be, why is that? That shouldn't be greeted with skepticism. It should be greeted with joy. I mean, we were told that was the balance of the ocean. It was going to destroy the ocean. No. 2/3. 2/3. Highest coral ever seen since they start looking at record. Not long ago, environmentalists were constantly telling us about the polar bears. Remember that? The reality is that polar bear numbers have been increasing from somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 polar bears in the 1960s. We have over 26,000 of them today. That's great news. We should be excited. The odds that TK and Chad can see a polar bear at some point in their life has gone up by a factor of 100+%, by over 50%. We don't hear that news. Instead, we keep hearing that the polar bears are drowning and going away. So, the deadliest environmental problem, air pollution, was 4 times more likely to kill you in 1920 than today. A lot of people were using, poop to heat their homes. They were burning it and wood. Despite COVID-related setbacks, humanity has become better and better off, yet doom-mongers will keep telling you the end is near. Great for fundraising, but the cost to societies are really high. We also end up ignoring much bigger problems. Consider the attention devoted to heat waves. In the United States and other parts of the world, heat deaths are declining because access to air conditioning helps much more than rising temperatures hurt. However, almost everywhere, the cold, brrr, and we have it once in a while, it quietly kills many more people. In the U.S. alone, about 20,000 people die from heat. But 170,000 people die from cold. And we rarely ever talk about that.
That's because they're sleeping in front of the library down on 3rd Street.
Maybe. Cold deaths are rising in the U.S., and our incessant focus on climate change is making it worse because politicians introduce green laws that make energy more expensive, meaning fewer people can afford to keep warm. And yet, that's what's killing more people. Imagine that. Imagine if we focused on preventing the 170,000 deaths as much as we focused on the 20,000 deaths.
Well,
and so, but this is a lot of good news. Humanity is actually getting more prosperous. In a separate report, the United Nations estimates that without global warming, the average person in 2100 would be 450% off better than today. Global warming means people will be 434% richer, they say. That's not a disaster.
No.
So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you just, and Bjorn Lornberg did this. I've interviewed him before. He's an amazing guy. He's president of the Copenhagen Consensus, and he's also at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. And Lornberg is someone who doesn't say climate change isn't happening, by the way. He's not a denier or anything like that. What he's saying is, why aren't we focusing on some other things that are happening instead of it always being the end of times? Because it's not the end of times. Air's better, water's better. Even the scientists yesterday admitted that. Do we have challenges?
Buy that. I can't sell cars, candy bars on carpet on that type of news. I need death and destruction to get people to open their
You're
wallet.
absolutely right, because there are a lot of organizations that benefit from you. And I'll go a step further. A lot of the nonprofits, let's forget just the kind of global climate change people, but a lot of politics is driven by fear on both sides. If you don't vote for the Republicans, the Democrats are going to take your guns and they're going to ruin your life.
Well, you can do more with emotional charged rhetoric than you can with intelligence, because intelligence requires thinking.
And sadly, we end up not having discussions. What I do love, I mentioned earlier in the broadcast that we tend to want, like the issue at the border, we sweep under the rug. We sweep. We sweep it. Oh, it's not a problem. There's not a problem at the southern border. There's nobody walking across the southern border. But the reality of it comes about. You can't ignore it, but so long. You can't propagandize it, but so long, because the impact of bad policy comes home to roost in communities and states across the nation. And that will, not dealing with it is not a solution. If you don't deal with certain things, they don't get better. I mean, whether it's teen suicides or fentanyl or, what we're giving our kids, public education, all these things come home to roost. There's a really good story today, and I'm not going to go through it too far, but I would advise people to check it out. And it's over at nature.com. Now, nature.com released an editorial about 2 weeks ago saying basically they are going to abandon some of their scientific endeavors because they don't want to offend people. In other words, if there's a study that says women get certain type of cancers more than men, they won't run that story because it might offend people. Or that there are differences, genetic differences between Asians and Caucasians. They won't run that because it would offend some people. They're not going to run scientific stories along the lines that wokeism would be upset about. Now, that's a little terrifying. We should all be concerned. And I don't say, but when scientific journals start abandoning science, we should really kind of be concerned, because that means truth has taken a back seat to not being offended. And yet you would want to know if you were more likely to get a certain type of cancer. You would want to know if you were more, because you're male or female. There are different cancer rates, disease rates, male, female, across races, across cultures. There's a lot. And we should want to know those things. And it doesn't matter if you're trans, the tiny percent of a percent that wants to be transgendered. That's great. You want to be that way, but recognize that at the genetic level, you're still male or female, and you can't change that. You can't unring that bell. And so the health issues that affect a given gender are still going to impact you, even if you've transitioned. So something to be aware of. Now, what they're saying in this article at Nature that I did like, because it didn't offend anybody, or it shouldn't, is it went back and looked at COVID, and it looked at what government policies have done through COVID. It looked at the lockdowns in dozens of different countries and studied across the board. Now, I'm not going to go through all of it because it gets really in the weeds, but it's a good article. And it says that essentially, if you were trying to prevent a spread of disease, there's plenty to suggest that the lockdowns prevented some of the spread of the disease. They say that. Now, before all the right, collectively gasp and loses their mind and throws spitballs at TK, you got to take that a step further. They also looked at the consequences of those lockdowns. So you have to look at cost, do a cost benefit analysis. And it's becoming very apparent that the economic and health cost of those lockdowns far outweighed what the lockdowns were meant to accomplish in slowing the spread. So what it did to our kids, what it's done to our teenagers, what it's done to our society, what it did to us economically, what it did to quality of life, and also excess deaths, those consequences were dramatic. And we're going to spend decades unraveling the consequences of those policies. So, but again, it was really popular to lock down. It was even our governor here in North Carolina, lockdown Roy. I mean, he locked it down in the middle of election, couldn't raise money, really helped reelect himself. And same parties held the same post, basically. So the good thing about science is that you hope that eventually the truth comes out, and the truth about lockdowns is coming out more and more. I was talking to a cruise line the other day, and about travel in the Caribbean now. You don't even need a vaccine card to travel pretty much anywhere in the Caribbean. None. Aruba, Antigua, St. Martin, the Virgin Islands, Grand Cayman, wherever you want to go, just go. Hop on a boat and go. But here's the weird part. If you want to go to Canada, you have to present proof of vaccination. Not only do you have to present proof of vaccination still, which is Justin Trudeau's kind of bizarre Canada, you have to take a test before you go within 48 hours of getting in there. It's one of the most restrictive nations on the planet. And here's the guy, it's kind of funny, the cruise line's like, but check back every day because we don't know what Canada's going to do. So anybody if you wanted to go to Canada and do the train ride through the country, you wanted to go up
or
to
if you want to
the other
drink Canada
side.
Dry.
Yeah, that's funny. But if you want to take a cruise that goes to Alaska, you can go to Alaska without all of that stuff. But the fact that it stops in Skagway or somewhere in Canada, no, you have to have proof and a test. So, but that could change because the Canadians are experiencing a horrific time. The war on truckers, the war on the right, and this kind of totalitarian regime attempt that Trudeau has inflicted upon folks. So it is that way.
Now, to sort of put a cap on that, Miss Littlefield has chimed in, and I think she's paying you a compliment by saying smart is sexy, because I know she's not talking about me.
You never know what someone's trying to say.
Nope. It's only 3 words. They could be
talking about you. Could be talking about you, TK.
She could be talking about the COO of Tru Colors. I don't know.
That she could be. Indeed.
So that's one of the issues.
You never know what's going to happen on a podcast, do you?
Not at all. And some of the questions that pop up, like that are going through my head as you're pontificating, which is something I'm not very good at, is how there's a drive to keep these arguments going. And the performative side of the politics is to, like, during the lockdown, I enjoyed it because I didn't want to see anybody. I could still do my job, and it was absolutely wonderful. I had less people to interact with or less elevators to get trapped in, that sort of thing.
But if you're an extrovert, it's the equivalent of being put in an insane asylum and railing against the walls. I mean, because for an extrovert that feeds off the energy of other folks being around, that actually makes them happy. People like me, I'm pretty extreme extrovert, but if you're an introvert, that was great, man. My sister loved it. She didn't have to deal with people. She was at home. She worked from home. She's a mom. She just has to deal with her family. Man, Thrillsville. I mean, you could. It's like Brer Rabbit in the Briar Patch. Please don't throw me in that Briar Patch. And so she was thrown in the Briar Patch, and she loved it. Meanwhile, to me, it was like I don't know, being thrown on top of a fire ant mound dipped in honey. It was just not a pleasant experience, and I think the mental consequences for folks, we're human. They call it civilization because we like to, socialize. We're civilized. It's groups of people. We interact. That's what we humans do. And so taking the ability to interact away was absolutely mentally debilitating for everyone except you and, my sister. So
right. Well, some of us pivoted on the technology that we had to, like the very beginning of that, you and I were trying to come up with a podcast, some sort of idea to maintain relevance. And with the shoestring budget I had, I burned up 2 computers from the 1800s.
Yes, you did.
Trying to make it work.
Without setting them on fire. But, when I first heard, I was like, why is TK setting computers on fire?
Yeah, whoops. I was taking old computers, trying to repurpose them for the 21st century, and yeah, it was like trying to teach my grandma how to use email. It just did not go well. But it helped.
Yeah, but I remember I took that idea to you and Joe. At the time, Joe Catanacci, we were, running the Talker as a terrestrial station. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the terrestrial station model has transitioned a great deal. I mean, if you look at Joe Rogan right now, Joe Rogan's probably the single greatest podcaster. And I'll give Joe Rogan credit for this. It's not that he tells you he's right. He's just giving you a perspective, and he's very honest about it. And it kind of weaves in and out of right and left. I think he's more libertarian. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter, though. So now he's telling people to vote Republican because he's just looking at society and kind of regurgitating it back from his perspective. But I think he does a remarkable job. He does things because he does things on his show you can't get away with the FCC. You can't smoke dope.
No, you can't smoke weed on a show. If I did that,
right?
Here, I'd
you
be
can't
fired.
drink on a show. He can do any of that, and he has like
he got
15
Elon
million.
Musk buzzed online out on show.
Good for
Man,
him.
That was awesome.
That was probably that's what just catapulted him into the stratosphere as far as podcasting goes. But we were dealing with trying to keep the station and considering putting hundreds of thousands of dollars behind the acquisition of equipment at a tower broadcasting. And so we had this discussion about being online, and the relative cost of being online is far cheaper than maintaining a tower. It's a very dated thing. And if the FCC was smart, they would make terrestrial radio an easier enterprise to participate in. But the fact that they're keeping the cost so high is, I think, it's really kind of creating atrophy in terrestrial radio stations.
Oh yeah,
and that's an unfortunate. So they're becoming slower to move, to gravitate. They're trying more desperate things to get advertisers and stuff. Meanwhile, the entire podcasting world is shifting and changing, and it's very morphic. It's very amorphous, I should say.
Yeah,
and so finding where it settles in, and we can do a lot of things. And heck, I'm still very uncomfortable with a lot of the way podcasting works, but would love to see that. And I'll give credit to you and Yael Osowski. We challenged you, Ted and I challenged both of you. Okay, what would it look like? You were the initial biggest pushback to any of this. You were the initial, this is terrible. You and Joe were told me I was crazy, that I basically had, hung out with a crack pipe or something. But and so we kind of walked away from that idea until, the clock wound down. And then you, to your credit, I'll give you this, as much as I can criticize you, well, no, as much as I can disagree with you on some issues, criticize is not the right word. As much as I could disagree with you on some issues, I think, I can respect the fact that you really endeavored to create something novel and do it. And it's a very New Zealand or U.S. American entrepreneur. Here's limited resources. Here's what needs to be done. And you kind of shove those together to create something very unique and that is still versatile enough to handle a very dynamic situation. So if someone's got an idea for a podcast, we can handle that. If someone wants to do some advertising, we can handle that. By the way, I'm going to give a shout out to Seaside Jewelers in a minute for helping sponsor this. But the dynamic nature of what we're doing and what you specifically, you and Yael, as we merge our website and our app and get those streams up and running on different format and in different places and different locations, and more people can tune in and people can tell people how to tune in. That's really the goal, because we want to inform, 2, we want to entertain, and 3, we can reach people in a lot of different places that the terrestrial signal just wouldn't reach. So people in Texas or Florida that are listening, and we appreciate that. And we still have a Southeast North Carolina bent and a North Carolina political bent, and we talk about those things, but they're all interconnected. And that's why the podcast works. And if you start getting into one group of individuals and they tell their friends and so on, it's like a Prel commercial from the 70s. And pretty soon we have 10,000 followers.
Oh my God.
So that's where the aim is.
That's a reference I haven't heard since I was like learning how to use.
They tell 2 friends, and so on and so on and so on. So.
And but there wasn't a lot of discussion of what the future would look like at that time. I had to literally sit down and kind of figure it out, look at what else was going on and saying what options are there, because we didn't have really a chance to explore it. Things were happening really quick. And I was still learning how to run the radio station to begin with.
And you need to put up on our podcast, but you need to put like a beach scene or something. You got it looks like blackberries with flowers or something. Those are your camera images on V2 and V3. I don't know who else sees this. I don't know if it's just us seeing it or other people are seeing it.
Only you.
Only me. Okay.
And that's,
so thank you. I thought everybody was seeing this, and I was like, what are they looking at?
That's so that I can tell the 3 machines apart. Otherwise, they're 3 black screens that are identical. So if I use, and I took all those photographs, by the way. So those photographs let me know which machine I'm dealing with and where the client or where the guest or where my host is going to be.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'll let it slide this time. Don't let it happen again.
well, it's good to know because we have the bottom of the hour. We'll work on the negotiations of the future contract here in a second. That was a joke.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
Little joke.
Little.
Anyway.
Okay, that's the button I wanted. Right there. There it is. So for those of you who are still listening, thank you for joining along, including Ms. Littlefield, Lane Beatty, Masi over in Punjab, Pakistan, and Walt Gilbertson, I guess. I'm
yeah, but we don't know that the Pakistani guy at 2 o'clock in the morning in the cave is really watching.
He's just hoping.
But Miss Littlefield, yeah, she's probably watching somewhere. So.
And we'll be right back. So don't go nowhere. The Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. The Tru Colors brewery, which hires active gang members, will close for good on Friday. Tru Colors founder George Taylor cites product concerns, COVID delays, and financial issues as major challenges leading the decision to shut down operations. In Taylor's announcement, he says Tru Colors lost more than $5 million in investments over the past year due to, quote, salacious headlines that scared off investors. A multi-million-dollar investment will bring more than 200 jobs to Wilmington. Governor Roy Cooper came to town yesterday to announce Live Oak Bank is investing $25 million to expand its campus and bring more than 200 jobs to the area. The jobs will be for several departments, including analysts, data scientists, and loan service specialists. The average salary will be $101,000 per year. An appeals court has ruled recreational fishermen can continue suing the state over accusations government regulators have violated state fishing laws. A 2020 lawsuit by the State Coastal Conservation Association and more than 80 people claimed the state allowed excessive for-profit commercial fishing and certain fishing methods, leading to dramatic declines in certain fish stocks since 1997. And CFCC students are celebrating this morning after it was announced the college may be changing course regarding its marine technology program. Initially, the college made the decision to change the employment status of the marine tech staff from exempt to non-exempt, which would have lowered pay for captains guiding the students. Marine technology students gathered on the Riverwalk in downtown Wilmington yesterday with plans to protest that change. However, administration told students they would implement sea time, an effort to make sure on-staff captains are compensated for time worked in excess of 40 hours during a work week while at sea. For more on these stories, you can head on over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. Not as unsettled as it was on our Wednesday and definitely not going to be as hot as inland communities. We'll only make it into the middle 80s, which is right where we should be for this time of year. Lower 80s in store for us along the immediate coastline with a high risk for rip currents for those east-facing beaches. So it's best to stay out of the water if you're headed out to the coast on this Thursday. As for the chances for rain, that starts to pick up to about 30% heading into the afternoon and the evening hours. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
This week on All Things Brunswick, Dr. Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation will join us to discuss the recently released test scores from the state regarding student achievement and also to discuss the Brunswick scores in relation to statewide. Join us 6 p.m. Tuesdays here on The Big Talker.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh, local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
Give him my number, would you? So we got something to do. Hey, welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right here on the Big Talker Network. BigTalker.live is the website. Please visit the website, peruse our schedule of content right there on the main page. Use the Listen Live tab or download the Android iOS device app for your device. And you can use that to listen live anywhere, everywhere you want to be, especially if you Bluetooth pair that device with your automotive entertainment system and take us anywhere you have to be, whether you want to be there or not. The important part is sending an email saying Chad Adams is the best and should take over the morning program because that idiot needs to go. That's
no, that sounds like a TK propaganda tweet or writing. So.
But sending an email is very, very important because it lets Chad Adams know that he's doing a wonderful job and should maintain the engineer but get rid of the morning host. How's that?
Again, I think that TK has a fan, that sounds like TK.
Yeah, it's good that he's there to push the buttons, but why does he have a microphone?
Dude, you're saying this about yourself. I love this. I love that you're like, well, TK's terrible, and he should. Yeah, I love that.
That guy's an idiot.
Self-affirming stuff that you're putting out there.
Oh, you should see my bio on Ordinary Times. I've submitted. I mean, I have a couple of articles published there, and in my bio it says I'm a studio engineer, radio engineer, reluctant morning show host.
Reluctant
morning show host. Because again, all the conversations I want to have are about, protocols and electrons and audio levels and, being less of jerks to each other, that sort of thing. Greater emphasis on personal responsibility, how people should be jailed for doing stupid stuff, even if it is cutting across all 3 lanes of 17 and just because you missed, I meant to turn right, I'm in the left turn lane, I'm going to cut across 3 lanes of traffic while people are screaming by at 60 miles an hour. Nothing bad's going to happen.
Well,
yeah.
Nothing. What could possibly go wrong?
See, everything just went dead silent when I start talking. But when you start talking, the chat blows up, all the numbers go up. It's like Christmas in here.
You're again, much appreciated. We've got, it's a steep hill. It's a steep hill to climb, for lack of a better phrase. How's that?
Yeah, well, I'm just dug in down at the bottom laying cables, which is working, by the way.
We're all there. So I do want to thank Seaside Jewelers. You have to be on Oak Island. Come by Seaside Jewelers, 8801 East Oak Island Drive. They're across from the hardware store that everybody knows about that has a phenomenal advertising campaign going. But, it's not aspiring to be, you buy the Hoop Diamond, but it is a great place to get personalized service and be the local jeweler. They do everything from repairs to new jewelry to custom designs. Anything you want, they can get, and they are helping make this show possible. So a special shout out to there.
Can I ask what repair? Because I'm just not a jewelry guy. What about jewelry would need a repair?
Because I'll give you, for instance, so we had without giving things, so a wife comes in, she goes, "Oh my God, you need to help me! I broke my husband's chain," and I'm like, they're like,
he's happy.
How did you break? Yeah. Well, how did you break? She says, "Well, I just kicked and I broke his chain." I was like, I don't even want to know.
Yeah,
that's almost
physical.
Too much detail. But you fix the broken chain. You fix if a diamond or a stone falls out of a piece of jewelry, you get that put back in, or watches stop working. And jewelry is remarkable that it has relevance at a very personal level. It's a choice people make to have, and all jewelry seems to have a story. Or you've got someone at a last minute guy who, oh my God, guy came in and he's like, I need a wedding band, or I need a wedding ring, or engagement ring. And I'm like, oh wow, I wasn't there, but this was relayed to me. And they said, so when are you getting married, or when are you getting engaged? He says, today. And they're like, well, nothing like waiting to the last minute, but we're not here to judge, we're here to help. And they said, when are you getting married? He says, tonight. So we're like,
man.
Does she know? And no, she doesn't know. So he had to get the engagement ring, get engaged, and get married all at once. And they came in afterward and apparently resized it. So that's another thing. People change sizes. They want to, get their rings resized. So resizing, customizing, repairs. People will have old jewelry they want to get rid of. Buying gold, cash for gold, things like that. So many different aspects of it that are rather remarkable. And seeing those repairs take place using microscopes and tech, it's like seeing a doctor's office. So it's kind of cool. But we appreciate the fact that they're sponsoring this. So,
well, that's one of the reasons why we are able to do this.
Yeah. So if you're anywhere near Oak Island, go visit Seaside Jewelers.
Now, the other
say
cool
hello.
thing about this show, about the entire format, is that there is no overarching list of things we can or cannot say. Right? Because there are a
Yes.
number of places where because of our advertisers, you cannot mention horse dewormer.
Yeah.
You
so
can't
there's
mention
that.
stolen election. You can't mention, a whole bucket of stuff. And here, it's
Yeah,
like,
we can mention. We can talk about the blood clots that are being pulled out of these teenagers. There was a 6-foot blood clot pulled out of a guy,
what
teenager
in the hell are you talking about?
It was in Ohio this past week. I mean, pretty much his football career's over. And there's a number now. Again, people are saying conspiracy theory, but we have to be honest about: is there a rise in these blood clot issues that are taking place amongst vaccinated young men? And the CDC and others, the makers, Moderna and Pfizer, have acknowledged that there is an issue, for a couple months that has to be looked at. So I don't know. I'm not gonna breed conspiracy. But if I were to say that 6 months ago on the air, that would have been, or put it in the Twitter sphere or anywhere else. They removed a guy named Alex Berenson, who's a remarkable reporter. Now, I don't always agree with Alex, but he does a good job of documenting his stuff, and they removed him for documenting his stuff about problems with the vaccines. So, but they have since lost a lawsuit, and Alex got a settlement. We assume a nice one. He's been restored on Twitter, and he's basically sacred now. They won't touch him.
Wow.
So he's enjoying that.
I usually, I'm thinking blood clots like in a older person who's had heart surgery and they have to take blood thinners and all these other things. But man, yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. I mean, the big 6-0 is a shadow in which I live. So,
the ride's almost over, TK.
that's what I'm saying, man.
That's what my doctor told me. I'm like, dude, I hit 50 or 51, and he's like, yep, the ride's over, halfway over. And it just really, he's my age, and I was like, that's just not what your doctor. It's not what you want your doctor to say. It's true,
right?
You don't want to hear your doctor say that. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, I still got a little bit of time left, don't I? Oh yeah, but it's over halfway over. So
yeah, you're on the backside of this hill.
Get done, I tell you. Get done.
But that's, some of the things that make this particular forum far more interesting is that we have access to platforms in a single location. So you can get to the Listen Live tab, which has absolutely no oversight whatsoever. It goes directly to your ear holes from that computer. So we can run things like Defenders Live, Defenders of American Excellence, which runs from 9 to 10 p.m. on the audio side, because everything they talk about has already gotten them kicked off of YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and everything else. So they are now an underground show, and we are quite proud to be one of their exclusive, or I don't know if we're exclusive, maybe I'm exclusive for North Carolina, I don't know. But we're definitely one of the outlets for them to help them gain that ground back that they can't get anywhere else.
Yep.
And I'm kind of excited about that because, I've worked in media for a million years. Okay, well, when I started, Jesus and I were playing handball during commercial breaks.
Sure. Out in the desert, right?
Out in the desert. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody understood back in the, BC era, right? Because topography was not at its highest
I know,
level.
TK, when you first came about, it was really tough, getting the fonts right on the stone tablets. It was really a challenge.
Because you can only do so much with a stylus before the clay bakes and hardens.
Right.
So since we moved on to the iPad, it's a lot easier.
That, no doubt.
But it was a completely different arrangement where the corporation actually ran the station, which was managed by a guy being paid by the corporations an exorbitant amount of money for people like me to push buttons and make it look pretty. And now that we have, a shift in that we can now have direct support from places like Seaside Jewelers, who else do we have? Full Circle Fitness, etc., that are supporting what we do as a station, not necessarily as a concept. Does that make sense? It's not like they're supporting any one message. They're supporting the entire station as a platform for messages.
Right.
And that I find to be pretty. It's a warm fuzzy.
And back to one of the just it's kind of breaking news that's going to be happening throughout the day. As you know, for some reason, even though we really fought a war to settle the fact that we're not real fond of monarchs and dictators, the reigning queen of England is in pretty serious shape right now. That's gonna be the big the reigning queen. I like that. You tried to throw Charles. But the queen's in pretty serious shape. She's under 24/7 medical supervision right now. That's been announced.
Healthcare none of us will ever experience.
Well, I mean, it depends on your version. What your thought of the British healthcare system.
Well, their dentistry has a lot to be desired, but their
no, I don't think it has a lot to be desired. I just don't think it's highly valued.
Well, I think the way they look at it is, if you're alive, you're fine.
Yeah, it's like the concept of braces is, it's an offensive thing to people from Great Britain. I remember when I was studying over there, I was just going through different places. I was always remarking they dressed very drab. They the women didn't really care. The women that were beautiful were strikingly the Elizabeth Hurley types, but the rest were kind of didn't care what they looked like, and the men didn't either.
Well, they have
wore
Avon
gray. It was gray, a lot of gray. Everybody wore gray, so it's overcast and they're gray. And I didn't know if it was like London camouflage because the streets were gray, the sky was gray, they were wearing gray. And I'm like, maybe there's more people. I couldn't see them. So, and their food was awful. And I was like, no wonder they wanted to conquer the world because they had terrible food.
Their breakfast is, oh God, what is that crap they make in the breakfast? It's like a sausage thing with this brown fluid on it.
Don't care. I was like trying to eat at Indian restaurants, anything but British food. Now, fish and chips, the exception. Fish and chips I'm good with, and no wonder they drank so much. They drank so much because the food was awful. It's like, man, no wonder they didn't have a drinking age. Gee whiz, mom's cooking so bad. I want to drink at 12. But years of age, not noon, years of age. And then you go to Scotland, and their national culinary contribution is called haggis, and it's made out of like an intestine of a cow with stuff shoved in it. And, even the dogs won't eat it. It's bad. So.
That's why America invented things like Burger King and McDonald's and
which
Jack
the Brits
fries.
Love, by the way. Kentucky Fried Chicken, BK, McDonald's, Pizza Hut.
Beth Bodenschatz is asking what about those mushy peas? Oh,
Beth's right. That's why Beth goes to Ireland instead of the UK. The Irish have better food. I tell you, I was my funniest. Well, I don't know. It's not going to be fun to the audience, but I'll share it. So I'm at Oxford for a little while, and the colleges are kind of neat because you're in a certain school, and that school has its own courtyard. It has its own place to eat. It has its own it's a church, and they're small. They're like in paddocks almost. They're like areas. And so we were eating one day, and it was you ate what was served, and I was eating. I was like, this is really quite tasty because I wasn't used to, but there's something in it that just doesn't taste as good. And I was like, what is this dish? And they said steak and kidney pie. And me, the British are nothing if not literal.
Why would they put those two together?
Why would they? Exactly. That was mine. And I was like, wait, are you saying is that just the name of kind of like shepherd's pie? I'm not really cooking a shepherd in shepherd's pie. It's shepherd's pie. So I'm like, steak and kidney pie. Maybe it's just a name, It looks, they cut the meat. No, it's actual kidneys. And so I was just of the mindset of, okay. I figured out how to identify what was kidney. Maybe kidneys were mushrooms. I would have been better. Steak and mushroom would have been better. Steak and kidney? No, that processes urine. I had no desire to eat kidneys. But they're like, oh, this is good. No. I just thought you guys don't know what real food is. So when in Britain, be wary. Or you can, when in Rome, do as you would in Rome. But so when I was in London, the University of London, my dorm room was right above the Indian, kind of part of the edge of the Indian sector. And I was, there were two Indian restaurants, a story below my dorm. So you'd open the windows at night and this wonderful Indian food, the smell of all these wonderful Indian dishes, these curry dishes, everything was amazing. And then you'd wake up and go eat British food and you'd be like, what the hell happened? What kind of dystopian world do these people live in? So anyway, sidetrack, the Queen's under medical supervision, not because of the food, but just because she's old and infirm, I guess.
Her city food.
No, I'm sure they don't. They probably serve her, really good food. She even realized that British food wasn't that good. That's why she stays in the palace. So I'm just kidding. Didn't mean to offend any Anglophiles out there. The food is awful.
But I knew that she had been hospitalized a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't know that she was,
Yeah, it's all over the news right now. The BBC has suspended regular programming until 6 p.m. because of the Queen's health. So the obsession.
Wow, because my news feed an hour ago didn't look like this. Now it's wow.
It's dominated by it.
Wow.
Completely dominated by it.
That's why I was thrown off the other day. They had a picture of Prince Charles in some full regalia and talking about his points or what the facets of him as what he would be like as a king. And I'm like, as a king of England, he doesn't have any power. He has more money than God, but he doesn't really have the ability to.
And Charles is an interesting critter, raised in a certain insulated way. And here's the funny side story about Prince Charles. So, per the laws of Great Britain, the Church of England, the Anglican Church, it was separated from the Catholic Church because of a divorce gone awry, couldn't get an annulment, created his own church. So, Protestant Reformation, all that stuff. So now the Church of England, the head of the Anglican Church, which is basically Episcopalian over here, is the head of the monarchy. So the Queen is the head of the Church of England. Now, Charles was messing around with Buddhism for a little while, back in the 80s. He was exploring Buddhism. Now, imagine if he had become a Buddhist. By law, he would have been, now at this point in time, if he was still a Buddhist, he would be the head of the Anglican Church. The Christian church would be led by a Buddhist.
Finally, some balance in the universe.
Kind of the whacking thing. Now, also worth mentioning, folks would want to know this. So all of this discussion we had early on about Hunter Biden and the disaster and the connection between Hunter and the big guy, which most everyone with any modicum of sense knows is the president. And the suppression by the media when the government, the FBI goes to Facebook and tries to assert that anything about Hunter is Russian disinformation, they suppress the story. Twitter bans the New York Post when they run the Hunter Biden explosive realities about the laptop and all of this, that wasn't real. It turns out it all was real. There's a new movie called My Son Hunter. It's about Hunter and Biden and Joe Biden, and it's unfortunately for the left, it can't be suppressed. So this thing, when it came out, was released last night, and several websites were shut down, not because the powers that be tried to shut them down, because they can't. It would look too political, but because of the traffic, the unbelievable number of people that are watching this, that are downloading and trying to get to it. mysonhunter.com. They go there, and we'll see. Now, of course, Rolling Stone has already put out that it's a horribly boring story. And the Guardian has said that the right-wing Hunter Biden movie is for fringe lunatics. Then the Independent in Britain is Lawrence Fox's embarrassing Hunter Biden movie is a fate worse than cancellation. The Daily Beast, the anti-Biden film that Trump lovers they'll love. The Trump lovers will just love it. So you see that you can see that already the reactions are not unlike what you would think. Now, Politico actually has a little bit of a different take, saying, the premiere of the new Hunter Biden film was as wild as you'd think. So, but Salon.com, left-leaning Salon.com says there's barely even a movie inside this deep state right-wing grift. So, we'll see what happens. But a lot of people are going to watch it. It's kind of like Dinesh D'Souza's 2,000 Mules, which many on the left try to discredit, but no one ever took it to court to try to discredit it. Because that's what I think that he was trying to get, was someone to sue him to try to discredit what he was alleging about ballot fraud in the 2020 election. And again, the way these things play out is kind of interesting. Meanwhile, our governor is Governor Koopa, avoiding any controversy out there. If you look at his Twitter feed, it's all about job announcements. He has not said almost anything political since someone in the media said he was a top 10 potential presidential hopefuls for the Democrat Party.
The son or the dad?
No, we're talking about Roy Cooper.
Oh, wait, he's
our governor. And this I think is the situation Democrats find them in, which is they have themselves with a problem. Hillary's not going to run. The Democrats don't want Joe to run. They don't want Kamala to run. So you're looking around right now, the heir apparent to the Democrat throne, and he was at the White House the other day when Biden wasn't there, is Gavin Newsom, California's governor. Now, California has bled citizens to Florida for a decade now. They've bled citizens they've bled so many citizens, they've lost a congressional seat. So they've taken the world's 5th largest economy and near about ruined it. With now they can't even provide enough energy to keep the air conditioning system on because they've been overly reliant on green tech, which hasn't saved them. They've had horrible forestry management problems, which has led to these massively intense wildfires. So much of California, which should be, God's gift to the world, it's a beautiful state. It has amazing people. And Northern California, very different than Southern California with respect to political endeavors. It's a different. But the Democrats think that Gavin Newsom is the savior for the party is a problem for them moving forward. I think they recognize that. Yeah. But again, it's 2022. So at this point in the Trump year, if you look so Trump was elected in 2016. At this point in 2014, the unassailable nominee and presumptive winner of the presidential election was going to be Jeb Bush. All the media were like, well, Jeb Bush is the front runner. He can't be. He's got the money. He's got the organization. Trump was a distant, wasn't even in the discussions 2 years prior to 2016. So any kind of prognostications about what will happen in presidential politics is it's as useful as a tarot card reading.
Oh, well.
Or actually, the tarot card reading might be more useful than any kind of prognostications about the 2024 presidential race. And any prognostications about I think the left right now, I was looking at some surveys, and this is a good way to finish up today. I was looking at some surveys about voter thoughts. So, the Democrats are like, oh, there's not going to be a red wave. We're going to do fine. The Democrats are going to do fine. But if you look at everything else, Joe Biden's numbers, the worst numbers that we've had in our lifetime for a president, including Jimmy Carter. You look at Joe Biden, you look at right track, wrong track. About 80% of the folks in the country think we're on the wrong track. When one party's in control of that doesn't help that party. You look at economic fear right now with people where people are concerned about the future and how much money they're going to be able to make. Can they pay bills? That's not going well. So all of these small businesses, about 80% of small businesses are very concerned about what the next 6 months to a year are going to bring. They're not hiring. They're kind of slowing down their hiring because they're scared. These are not trend lines that benefit the party in power, regardless of the propaganda to the contrary. So no matter how much one group tries to say everything is great, another Biden win, another great win for Democrats, the Inflation Reduction Act is great, the infrastructure plan is going wonderful, and immigration's not a problem, the Iran deal is fantastic, the Russians, we're going to beat them in Ukraine. All of these things, that saying them is not instilling confidence in the public. It's not instilling confidence in the markets. And I saw a report this morning from Reuters, and I don't know if it's kind of prescient trying to predict what's going to happen, but it said we need to get to unemployment around 7.5% to deal with inflation. Now, one would argue that that's a disaster of another type. Maybe the Biden administration sees that unemployment's getting ready to zoom up, and they're trying to set expectations by some kind of story about that. The economic indicators are not good. The inflation numbers are not good. The recessionary numbers are not good. The markets we're off of. We're way off from the 36,000 the Dow. We're like 31. I don't know what it's doing today, but we're off 20+% for the year so far. This is an absolutely horrendous year by almost all measures. So when the president says we're doing great, things are wonderful, it's propaganda more than it is fact. An honest president would come out and say, hey, folks, I know there are these concerns. I know this is going on. I know this is going on. It would give people the sense that the president knows what's going on. And what the political left doesn't seem to understand is just acting like you're not aware of what's going on doesn't give Americans confidence in when they already think you don't know what's going on, and then you act like you don't know what's going on, and your press secretary acts like she doesn't know what's going on. It makes us think you really don't know that it's kind of a Chauncey Gardner being there. Kind of that's a backwards look at the final movie of Peter Sellers filmed in Biltmore, where Chauncey Gardner. Yeah. Anyway, it's as if the lights are not on at the White House, and moving ahead. I just don't think Democrats are going to have a good year. They may have had an August excitement a little bit, but they're just, they're trying to act like abortion is going to be the issue that dominates the election. I don't see that happening. And in Wilmington, even those races, I think that the one that we're looking at in downtown with John Hennett and Deb Butler, I think John Hennett could win. That's a race that shouldn't even be close. That's a race that Deb Butler should walk away with a 10-point win easy, a 55-45 race. That race is in contention. And so I think Democrats realize the uphill battle they're in. We'll see how it goes, though.
Man.
But appreciate what you're doing, trying to keep the lights on, man.
Oh, man, we need good content, and you're probably the best of source.
Hey, is my video frozen, or is it just my screen?
It shouldn't be your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it moving on my side. I guess you're
okay, so you can see me waving, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, otherwise
mine's just like frozen, like a really bad image action shot of me talking. So.
Oh, yeah, that's your Spectrum, I guess.
Yes, must be.
Or it's your Mac, because I'm rocking over here.
Yeah, I see down in the corner the video is perfect, but the one on the screen, like the Google Meet one, is very like one frame every 10 seconds.
Ah, yeah, that's your poor machine or internet on your side.
Anyway,
sorry.
We're wrapped up, man. Thank you.
Yeah, we are. Dude, I will see you tomorrow morning with more subjects and a couple of guests, including Dr. Olivares of the New Mexico State University talking about the fungus, not a pizza topping. That's what I keep thinking of. And we will also have Matt Miller from zerocancer.org. So it's going to be a packed day. It won't just be me and you.
Peace out. Gotta run.
Okay.
Have a good day.
To the store, and I will see you in the next couple days. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, look at that. I hit the button. The music doesn't play. There it is. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in for a fantastic Asylum. Only because we had Chad. And now, we are going to move on to the rest of our day right here on the Big Talker Network. See you tomorrow. You're tuned in to the Big Talker Network, Wilmington, North Carolina's premier internet station for news and talk radio programming. Find us online at bigtalker.live.